We'll see it inside. We got Yosef admitted into this, into the share. Now we're getting Dr. Navid. Good morning, Dr. Navid. Okay, so the Gemara said, trying to understand what's the case that a Yisrael goes to Galut. If a Yisrael went ahead, he goes to Galut. There's two laws that were said. He goes to exile, and he gets Malkut by interacting with a Kuti. So the Gemara explained, we understand that he goes to Galut if he interacts with the Kuti. If he goes ahead and he kills the Kuti, the Kutites, as we said, the Kutim, according to this opinion, they were Geri Emet, they were true converts. So if the Yisrael kills the Kuti, these Kutites, the Yisrael will go to Galut. Okay, no problem. We understand that, right? Like killing any other Jew, they go to Galut. Even though the Kutim were not keeping the Torah and the Mitzvot properly, but that doesn't affect the fact that he's still a Jew, if you hold their true converts. And if a Jew goes ahead and he kills them accidentally, unintentionally, the Jew will go to exile. But what's the case that the Jew gets malkut, gets lashes for something that he did to the kuti? The Gemara was trying to find, back on Chet Amud Beis, 8b on the bottom, the Gemara wanted to find what is the case that the Jew will get lashes in his interaction with the kuti. The Gemara says, if you're going to tell me that the case is that the Jew cursed the kuti, and we know that cursing a regular Jew carries with it malkut, so you might think that would be the case. So the Gemara says that can't be, because when it comes to such a prohibition. Good morning, Jaime. Good to see you back.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. We are on Chet Amud Beis 8b, which the Gemara mentioned that if a Jew goes ahead and does something to a kuti, does something in his interaction with a kuti, the kutim we said are converts, and we're going with the opinion that they're true converts because there was a matter of discussion whether they're true converts or not. The Jew will get lashes. The Gemara suggests what's the case that he'll get lashes for something that he did to the kuti. But the Gemara says maybe the case is Muni Akiva that he cursed the kuti. And we said generally the Torah prohibits us to curse another Jew. The biblical prohibition is Muni Akiva, if you curse another Jew in using one of Hashem's names, when you curse another Jew, you say the Almighty should curse a certain person. That would be a biblical prohibition, whether you said it in English, Hebrew, Yiddish. Remember, the Sefer Chaya Adam was written by Rabbi Avram Danzig about 200 years ago, and he lived in Europe. And he wrote, if you curse someone in Yiddish, using like God should strike him or something, that's a biblical prohibition, because maybe you mentioned God, you connected the curse with God, that God, and should curse this person, and there's a biblical prohibition. Remember, it's such power to cursing someone, there's such power to blessing someone. When you bless somebody, there's a great power to a blessing. The Sefer Chinuch said, why should a person think he says, why does the Torah prohibit someone from cursing another Jew? So you would say that the prohibition of cursing another Jew is because it's a bad midah. It's not nice. You get angry, you curse. It's not nice for the person who's going ahead and giving the curse. But Sefer Chinuch says there's another reason, because there's a power to a curse. The problem with cursing is one issue is the person's giving the curse. There's another issue for the person who's being cursed. Because the fact that a person curses somebody, what happens, I presume, in heaven is that in heaven they open up the books. Somebody wished something not nice on somebody, someone wished something bad on somebody. So in heaven, they say, maybe the guy is deserving. Let's open up the books. If somebody is so upset with the person that he curses the person, maybe he's deserving or she's deserving. So they open up the books and maybe chas v'shalom. And once an investigation is open, who knows if a person will win the investigation? So that once the court is open, there's a court. So that's why one of the reasons why we don't want, Torah wants to prohibit someone from cursing another Jew, because it's power to that curse. Because you could be hurting the Jew. How do you like that? Fascinating, safety. But remember, the power to curse is so powerful. That means remember the power of blessing is so powerful. Morning, Morris, welcome back. That if a person blesses somebody, they get such a power to a blessing, like we had in Megillat Ruth. In Megillat Ruth, it says over there that Boaz didn't have children. He was married first. He didn't have children, and then he got a blessing from Naomi, and then he was able to have children. So we have power of a blessing. So the Gemara says, what's the case that the Jew does something to a Gentile, to a Kuti, that he's going to get lashes? If he curses the Kuti, so you're going to say he curses the Kuti, the Gemara, it's just like any Jew, a person curses any Jew, he gets lashes. He uses Hashem's name, one of Hashem's nicknames or whatever in the curse. So too, if he cursed the Kuti, according to the opinion that they're considered proper Gerim, proper converts, so that shouldn't we have found the case that the Jew gets lashes? The Gemara says no, because when in connection with cursing, the Torah prohibits cursing. The Torah prohibits cursing a certain type of Jew, someone who acts like a Jew. But if someone who's Jewish but doesn't act Jewish, the Torah does not prohibit you from cursing that person. I don't recommend it. I don't think you should do it. But on a Torah level, it's not the case that the Torah obligates us and tells us we can't do. Because it says, the Gemara says, the pasuk says, Nasi ba'amcha lo sa'ah. The Gemara says in one area, it says you're not allowed to curse a Nasi, a prince, a leader among the Jewish people. Ba'amcha, when it says ba'amcha, the Gemara has a drasha that if he's acting, he's osa ma'aseh amcha. There are certain things that are called the ways of the Jew. The ways of a Jew. Osei ma'aseh amcha. It means if a person keeps Torah and mitzvot, that's the way of a Jew. But if a person does not act like a Jew, the fact that he's Jewish by name, regarding this law, the Torah does not prohibit you to curse that person. So now the Gemara says, and the Kutim, and these Kutim are not the Kutites, they're not acting like Jews. They're worshiping idols, they're doing other things that are not like Jews. So therefore, there's no biblical prohibition of cursing such a Jew. So therefore, what's the case that the Jew gets lashes, gets malkut, for something that he does to the Kuti? He can't be cursing, because cursing, he will not get lashes. So the Gemara, the last thing we said was the last line on Chet Amid Beis, on 8b, the last line on 8b, Elo Amar Rav Acha B'Rei Rav Eka Hocha Ma'askinan Kigon She'Kahu HaKaha. If he hit the Kuti, but the type of hitting that he hit the Kuti, he slapped him across the face, let's say, Hakar She'ein Bo Sheva Puta. Now we're on Tet Amid Aleph, Mabruk, we're on 9a, 9a1. If he hit the Kuti, he hit him, he got physical with the Kuti, a type of hitting which was not the loss. There was no the loss of that. There was no loss of value, of financial value. Sometimes that a person gets hit, there's some sort of loss of value. If he would be sold as a slave after having such a bruise, his value might go down. If the guy gets really beaten up or really gets hit, there could be that type of bruise would sometimes certain bruises would take away from his value as financial value if he'd be sold as a slave. But if a person hit another Jew, that as a result of that wound, there's no monetary payment. There's no financial and loss. It was, let's say, even if there was, if it was less than a shavaputa, less than a shavaputa means that it's less than the smallest coin. They used to say a penny was a shavaputa. Maybe some say a nickel today, whatever has some value. A penny might not have value today, but if someone hits somebody, a hitting and the value, the loss is less than a puta, less than a penny, and he was warned beforehand, and it was done in front of witnesses, we will give the man lashes. He violated a Torah prohibition. Even though he didn't cause any financial loss to somebody, if he would have caused a financial loss by his hitting, by his striking, there's no lashes. What will be the punishment? Pay the money. The person hurt somebody, broke somebody's arm, chas v'shalom, broke his foot. There's a value. The Torah says there are 5 payments that have to be paid. There's the value, the loss of value of the person because his hand was broken. Determine that. So at that moment, I would think at that moment, after they broke his hand, now if he would want to be sold if he would want to sell himself, sometimes a person would sell himself as a slave to raise money. The person was poor and had no money. A person would sometimes they would sell themselves as a slave. And that on the market, there was a market that say how you want to sell yourself as a slave, there's a certain value. Yeah, but so I presume they had in that market where people would sell themselves as slaves. There were people who were experts to know what the person's value is. They would look at him. Maybe there are people that will. I'm saying, yeah, but even in the court, when the court would give lashes to somebody, right? If someone violated a mitzvah that carry with it lashes, they would have somebody in the court that would estimate what is the person's capabilities. I mean, if a 95-year-old man was warned and intentionally ate pork, ate not kosher food, the court is not going to give him 39 lashes because that could kill him. So they would have somebody in the court that would estimate how many lashes they could give him, and they would give a certain amount of lashes. They wouldn't give the whole 39. So I presume in the market where people would sell themselves as slaves, there were people who were experts. Just like, in business, you're in the diamond business, you could recognize what the value of a diamond is.
Back then, they didn't know what was the extent of gravity of the injury.
Ariel, they were smarter than we think. They knew. They look at the guy's hand. They give him a look. They check it out. They give him, and they'll figure out what the value of loss is. But getting back to the point here, getting back to here, so when a person hits somebody, when a person gets physical with another Jew, if you cause a loss of value to the other Jew, what do you want to say, Ariel?
You didn't know what he said that they were establishing the punishment based on when it says like the person loses this value.
If there was a financial value loss,
would be sense take 1 month.
So they estimate all. They presume they estimate that at that moment. They say, what was his value before? How much would he be able to get the value when he would be sold as a healthy man? Now he's sold as with a broken arm. Okay, we have to see exactly how. But that's okay. Okay, very good. I presume. What does the market? Okay, it's a good question, but it seems like what would the market give for it? Now we have a different case. The case is the following. If a guy hits somebody and there's no financial loss, so then the punishment is lashes. If who hits? A non-Jew, a Jew?
Before, because before we were trying to find a case where a Jew get lashes by doing something to the Eva Canaan, right?
And a coot.
What they would give that the Israeli testified. And
Morning, Mike.
We found out that it was right?
Morning.
And we found out it was a man.
Right.
So what do we say? We say no, that does not apply because Evet Kenani cannot be a man, cannot testify against an Israeli, right?
Right.
So now we bring another case where an Israeli gives a hit to Kenani. And we say he gets lashes if he doesn't show it.
Right. Right.
Kenani hit the Jew.
He should also get lashes. So Evet Kanani, if the Evet Kanani, remember, an Evet Kanani is obligated in mitzvot like a woman. And Evet Kanani is obligated in mitzvot. Evet Kanani is a non-Jew who sold himself as a slave to a Jew. And there's a certain process of being sold as a slave to a Jew. He has to go to the mikveh. He has to have a circumcision. He has to accept the mitzvot. That Evet Kanani is obligated in mitzvot like a woman. So now, what's the law if a woman hits another Jew? A Jewish woman hits somebody. She was warned and she was told, don't hit somebody. And she hit somebody. If she hits the person and there was no loss of value, she gets malkut. You're wrong, she'll get lashes. Just like a man, if a man hits another Jew and he was warned and there was no loss of value to the other person that he hit, if someone gets physical, Mike, another Jew, hit him across the face. And let's say he didn't cause loss, there's no loss of value of the person that got hit. But the person was warned that obligated lashes, malkut. And what's the source of that? Because the Torah says when a person is the agent from the court to give lashes, the Torah says if somebody is obligated lashes, malkut, the Torah says you give him 39 lashes, lo yosif. Don't give him one more for good luck. Don't give him any more than Yosef. We have Yosef and Tzaddik. You don't give more than the Torah instructs the agent of the court not to give any more than 39. So we learn out here if somebody who was a Rasha, who willingly violated the Torah, that's how he gets lashes. What's the case that a person gets lashes? When a person was warned and he intentionally or she intentionally violated the Torah. So they're a Rasha, right? That's a Rasha. They were warned, they were told, they knew it carried lashes, and they still violated it. And yet the Torah says, in such a circumstance, you can't give them one extra. So a fellow Jew who's not a Rasha, certainly you can't give him a hit. You can't hit them. How do you like that, Ariel? So when a Jew gets physical with another Jew, they're violating one of the 613 mitzvot. Any type of hitting. Of course, we're not talking about a love pat. A love pat is not hitting. You give someone a little, Rabbi Vadi Yosef give a little love pat, right? That's not hitting. But if someone who intentionally intends to hit another Jew, they're violating one of the 613 mitzvot. So the Gemara is saying, so even though when it comes to cursing another Jew, the Torah's prohibition that says don't curse another Jew is limited to specifically a Jew who acts Jewish, a Jew who does not act Jewish, a Jew who doesn't follow Torah and mitzvot, like these kutim who were converted, who worship idols. There will not be a prohibition of cursing such a Jew. The Torah does not say refrain from cursing. The Torah doesn't tell you to curse him, but the Torah does not tell you to refrain from cursing him. Nevertheless, when it comes to hitting such a Jew, this opinion says the Torah is telling you to refrain from hitting this Jew. Even though this Jew you're not prohibited to curse from cursing this Jew, but when it comes to hitting this Jew, the Torah is prohibiting you from hitting this Jew. That's according to the Torah does not forbid a person from cursing a Rasha. Torah does not forbid a person cursing such a person. Even though he's Jewish, the Torah does not forbid whether you should do it or not do it is a different question. But hitting him, you can't hit him. The fact that he's a Rasha, the fact that you can't hit.
Rabbi, the individual is allowed to make the judgment if he's Rasha or not?
That's a great question. In order for someone to be, it seems a Rasha is somebody who does a sin that would carry with it lashes. So if you know somebody, if you see somebody that he goes in and eats not kosher, he knows it's not kosher, and intentionally, doctor says very good word, intentionally, you know the food is not kosher, and he goes to not kosher restaurants. Chas v'shalom. That person is a rasha, then you know he's a rasha, and he cannot be a witness at your son's wedding. He's not a valid witness. A rasha, the Torah says, is not a kosher witness. That would be a case of a. That's why it's so important to who are the witnesses on the wedding. But the Torah says he can't. Therefore, that would be a case that you know he's a rasha. You know he violates something that carries with it at least the penalty of lashes or more. A guy desecrates the Shabbat. He willingly desecrates. You see a person willingly desecrate the Shabbat, that person's called a rasha. A Kohen marrying a Grusha. He knows that today, of course, today, a Kohen marries a Grusha. The Torah says a Kohen is not allowed to marry a Grusha. And it carries with it, to my knowledge, it carries with it the penalty of lashes. He violated the Torah's prohibition. The Torah says don't marry a divorcee, and he married a divorcee. I'm happy to say I know of a story. There was a terrible story. There was a Kohen going with a divorcee, and thank God he let her go. Met someone who was a widow. Thank God he's getting married to her. But it's a terrible thing that people Kohanim going with a divorced woman. It's a very serious sin. What? No, Kohen can't marry a convert. It would seem so. We have to see more about it, but it's a sin. It's a sin. He's not allowed to marry a convert. The Kohen can't marry the convert. Okay. There's enough people for the Kohen to marry. The Kohen has the Baruch Hashem. He has a lot of single women to marry, and he's also allowed to marry a widow. The Kohen can marry a widow. So the Gemara, yes. No, but it's forbidden. He can't marry. Not allowed to marry a convert. Kohen can't marry a convert.
Yeah, but just using the status of the coin, but
I mean, he's doing something. It's forbidden. It's forbidden for him to marry.
how come we have married couple?
What do you have in the
Married couple. Coin, we do. Shall we know?
with a grusha, with a divorcee?
Yeah,
It's
they
also
have
a sin, big sin.
They have some-
No rabbi is allowed to marry them. No one's allowed to marry a Kohen to marry a divorcee. Forbidden. Forbidden. The Torah says you can't marry her. No one can marry her. It's a big sin, big time. Violating the Torah. Sin, black and white. The Torah says a Kohen can't marry a divorcee. It's clear, black and white. One day it'll be in color, maybe. I don't know, but it's black and white. The kiddos do not have a status of Kohanim. They're not allowed to do. They're not mamzerim. They're not mamzerim. But to be a mamzer, to be the illegitimate child, that you're not allowed to marry, an illegitimate child is not allowed to marry a Jew from birth. Someone who's a mamzer is someone who the type of sin was a minimum of karet, minimum of the sin of karet, which is cut off from the next world. If it's a sin that doesn't carry karet, the child will not be mamzer. Therefore, the child born from a Kohen marrying a divorcee, the sin does not carry karet. Therefore, the child is not a mamzer. What? No rabbi is allowed to marry them, but even though the rabbi is not allowed to marry them, if they get married, some rabbi they fooled the rabbi, or whatever. However, they got married, and they didn't tell anybody about her status. She didn't reveal her status. She went to a foreign country, and she got married, and so then technically it's interesting that the marriage takes effect. They considered married, she would still need a get from this husband, but it's a marriage in sin. It's a marriage in sin. There's that's halal. He's invalid for kuhuna. Now he wounded his children. The child, not the Kohen. But the father doesn't lose his status while he doesn't sin. But the child is not able to do a service. No, I don't think no. The father, I think the father who did the sin, he doesn't lose his status. Whether we allow him, we have to know what we do to him, what the community pressure on such a person to.
So is my question
Who?
is this person someone like the same first
Is who considered Russia? Yeah, it's a Kohen who marries a divorcee is a Russia. Now, the Gemara said until he does shuvah, he does repent, he divorces her. Okay, and he does shuvah and he repents. So now let's look at the Gemara. The Amar of Ami, top of the page of Testament Aleph. Mr. Safdie is really taking it all in. The Amar of Ami and Rabbi Yochanan. If a person hits somebody, a hitting, the value and the loss is less than a shavaputa, so there's no real financial loss. Look at there's lashes for such a person who hits another Jew, such a type of hitting. And we don't compare the prohibition of hitting to the prohibition of cursing. What does that mean? Rashi says in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, there's a dispute that some compare the prohibition of hitting to the prohibition of cursing, which would mean to say somebody who you are not forbidden to curse, you would not be forbidden to hit. Therefore, there will be some that would hold that if a person is not allowed, therefore, and our Gemara is saying over here, we don't do that. We don't compare the two. You make a distinction. There are those that will compare hitting to cursing. If there's no violation of the prohibition of cursing, there's no violation of the prohibition. A person who there's no prohibition to cursing, good morning, Mr. Batesh, there's no prohibition of hitting. But our Gemara is saying we don't compare the two. We make a separation. We say cursing is different than hitting. That cursing a Jew who does not keep Torah mitzvot, who willingly doesn't keep Torah mitzvot, that the Torah does not prohibit you to curse such a Jew. But to hit such a Jew, the Torah prohibits you. So therefore, this kuti, even though the kutim, these converts who were not keeping the mitzvot now, they were doing idol worship, but they were Jewish. So when it comes to the prohibition of cursing them, the Torah does not forbid you from cursing such a Jew. But when it comes to hitting such a person, the Torah forbids you for hitting such a Jew. And that's the case that a Jew would get lashes if he hits a kut. Is that clear, Mike? That's what the Gemara wants to say. Yes. Yes, this is but this is this is a new point about there are those people that compare hitting to cursing, and our Gemara doesn't compare that. Say it again. No, Everkana keeps mitzvot like a woman. Again, we're talking about a kuti cursing somebody who doesn't. Who doesn't. According to this, the Torah does not prohibit you. Right. Right. Whether the Jew keeps Torah mitzvot or not is prohibited. It doesn't make a difference of what type of Jew he is. You can't. The Torah is prohibiting you to hit any Jew. Okay. Now, chutz mi al yidei ger toshav. We're now 3 lines from the top on Tet and Aleph. Should be Tet 9-1 A1. The Mishnah stated the following. The Mishnah stated that everybody goes to Galut if he kills, meaning the Gemara explained if a Kanani, if a Kuti kills a Yisrael, if certain people kill another Jew or a Jew kills another certain people, they go to Galut. Who doesn't go to Galut? The Mishnah says chutz me ger toshav. A ger toshav, the Mishnah says, does not go to Galut. Who is a ger toshav? Ger toshav is a non-Jew who lives in the land of Israel. In order for him to stay and live in the land of Israel, he has to accept upon himself. Some say he has to accept upon himself not to worship idols, and some say he has to accept upon himself the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach. And I think he has to go in front of a bezdin, a formal acceptance of the laws. So even though every Gentile is obligated to keep the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, which we know you're not to worship idols, not to murder, not to steal, and so on and so forth, which is a big problem today because I'm seeing that people constantly jump the turnstiles today. So they're violating the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach. Those people that are jumping the turnstiles are stealing. Right, so we're gonna see. Let's see. Very good. We're gonna see. Except the Ger Toshav. So now this Ger Toshav has a unique status. He's allowed to live in the land of Israel. I got that, Mr. Batesh? He can land in the land and live in the land of Israel, but he has certain responsibilities. Let's see, he has accept upon himself the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach. Now the question is, but he's still a Gentile. And then, so the Mishnah says, but if the Ger Toshav, and the way some explain the Mishnah, if the Ger Toshav kills the Yisrael, unintentionally, the Ger Toshav will not go to Galut. That Galut is not enough, like Yaron says. It's not enough. If he kills the Jew unintentionally, the Ger Toshav will not go to Galut. Galut would be something that's just like if a guy kills a Jew, there's no Galut. For a Gentile who kills a Jew unintentionally, so too there's no Galut, there's no going to exile for a Ger Toshav. A Ger Toshav, even though he has an elevated status, because he's someone who is not just a regular non-Jewish person, he actually accepted upon himself the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, and he's living in the land of Israel. But nevertheless, if he kills the Jew unintentionally, he also does not go to Galut. Okay? We're going to see more what happens to him, but at this point, we're going to say he does not go to Galut. But then the Mishnah also stated an interesting thing, that a Ger Toshav that kills another Ger Toshav unintentionally, the Ger Toshav will go to Galut. So the Mishnah says an interesting thing about a Ger Toshav. If this Ger Toshav is connected to Galut, what's the case that he goes to Galut? If he kills another Ger Toshav. Okay? Ger Toshav kills another Ger Toshav. What did you say? Unintentionally. He kills another Ger Toshav unintentionally, so he will go to exile. That's what the Mishnah says. The Gemara has a hard time wrapping its head around this concept. How do you treat a Ger Toshav? It's not that he's an independent person, but he lives. We control Eretz Israel. We, in the time that we had the power that we controlled the land of Israel, right, Morris? But we allow him to live here. We, the government of Israel, there's no government anymore, right? We, the government of Israel, we allow him to live in Israel as long as he follows. I presume the laws of Ger Toshav was probably applied more when we had to make a mikdash, these type of things. And also we have special mitzvot of, I think it even says to help him, to help the Ger Toshav. We have a mitzvah to support him, to help him. Yes, what do you want to say? The issue for the Gemara is, what status, how do we consider the Ger Toshav? Is he a guy? You treat him like a non-Jew? You treat him like a Jew. In a certain sense, you're treating him like a non-Jew, because you say if the Ger Toshav kills the Yisrael unintentionally, you say the Ger Toshav does not go to exile, which is similar to a non-Jew. A non-Jew kills a Jew unintentionally. The non-Jew doesn't go to exile. So is he? What did you say? Right, so he's not going to have that protection, and he might even be killed for doing this unintentionally. So you're treating him like a non-Jew, and then yet you tell me if a ger toshav kills another ger toshav, he does go to exile. That sounds like a Jew. A Jew, you're treating him like a Jew. A Jew kills another Jew unintentionally, he goes to exile. So, then in some aspects, yes. So good. So very good. So listen what the Gemara is going to say. So the Gemara says like this: Alma, 4 lines at the top. Alma ger toshav over kachavim. We see that the ger toshav is, we consider it, the fact that you say he does not go to exile if he kills a Jew. So you say that you treat him like a non-Jew. So the Gemara says, Ema Seifa. I'll show you the Seifa. Seifa is from the word sof, the end. I'll show you the second part of the Mishnah. Ger toshav goleh al yedei ger toshav. A ger toshav goes to galut, he goes to exile if he kills another ger toshav. So what do we see? So we see that you give him a status like another Jew. You're giving this man, this ger toshav, sometimes you're treating him like a Jew, and sometimes you treat, how are you treating him? You're obviously making a difference between what the case is, but whether he kills another ger toshav, you say he has a status like a Jew, and when he kills a Jew, he doesn't have a status like a Jew. In the Gemara's question, it's hard to, why should we give him multiple statuses? Case by case, right? That's the Gemara's problem. Right, that's true. Right.
So for something that the Jew respect and certify, so we get they're supposed to give the respect between them, right?
Right.
If we give them the respect, so between ger toshav, they must give them the respect between them. So if someone killed another ger toshav, he should go to exile also, like a Jew. Some law apply because they live in Israel.
So who killed the ger toshav? Which case?
Between them, between
Ger toshav and ger toshav.
Yes.
So we're going to give them some status, and then we're going to tell them to go to
Why?
Golos.
Because we learned that we give them kavod because they respect few halachot of the Torah.
Right.
So because of that, we learn some halachot of the Torah that we also for killing they go to
Yeah, but still, the question is that enough? Would that be enough to give him two different types of status? You're still, in a certain sense, you're saying if the ger toshav kills a Jew, he does not go to exile. It means you're treating him like. That a kuti hits it. No, a kuti would go. A kuti would go to exile. If a kuti, yeah, kuti, because we're saying a point that we're saying that a kuti are true converts. Good morning. A true convert kills another Jew unintentionally, will go to exile. But the Jew would go to exile if he kills the convert. The convert. The curse is different because the guy doesn't keep the mitzvot. Because the guy doesn't keep the mitzvot. We have a law that we said that if a person doesn't keep the Torah and the mitzvot, that type of Jew, the Torah gives us a certain responsibility how we talk to the other Jews. The Torah forbade us to curse another Jew. But if the Jew does not keep Torah and mitzvot, that's not the type of Jew that the Torah forbade us from cursing. I don't know that it's a good idea to curse him, but the Torah does not forbade us to curse that type of Jew. So the Gemara here has the question of what is, so the Gemara gives it in.
I have a question, Rabbi.
Yes,
because at any given time, you and I are not keeping some kind of a mitzvah. So if you look at someone and say, oh, okay, this person is not keeping this mitzvahs, so you can, is it, it sounds like you can always make a case of cursing another Jew because you're not
very
keeping.
Good. Very good. So I would say, very good. So I presume when it says that the Torah, the prohibition of cursing another Jew is only if he acts like a Jew, I presume it means that he and it means he believes in God. Meaning the question, at what point would a person not be violating the prohibition? If the other person is worshiping idols, these are different levels. You know, a Jew who talks negative about another Jew, he still, and he keeps Shabbat and other things. So even though he's doing a sin, but that sin does not separate him from acting like a Jew. He's not being a good boy, he's talking negative. But I presume it has to be a certain type of level of sin, like worshiping idols, desecrating the Shabbat. That type of sin means he's disconnecting himself from acting this is the norm of what the Jew identifies himself by not worshiping idols, by keeping Shabbat. I presume that's the type of thing. I don't want to make everyone late to the Shachrit. I want to wish everyone, time flies when you're having fun. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you all for being here.
Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good day.
Thank you. If you if you curse somebody, but it's forever because why? Why is it forever? Because what's the reason? Tell me, Mr. Patel.
It's damaging to their personality. It's damaging to their psyche.
To the person who did it, or the person who received it? Who received it?
Also, the person who did it.
Right. So it's a terrible thing to curse. It's we don't recommend, nobody should be cursing. The Torah is not prohibiting it. Now, I would recommend it, but the question is, there's certain levels that the Torah has certain obligations that we as Jews, the Torah does not obligate a Gentile from cursing another Gentile. That's not one of their obligations. But I don't recommend a Gentile from cursing. But the same thing, the Torah does not prohibit us from cursing another Jew who's not acting Jewish. But I don't think it's a good thing, because first of all, we said that when a curse has power to hurt the person, like you said also. Right. So therefore, right. What you're supposed to do, take care, is to bring him back with love, not with cursing him. 100%. Have a great day, Mr. Patesh. Take care, Akiva. Have a great day. Thank you, Dr. David. Akiva, I can't hear you.
That's a very interesting lesson, Rabbi. It's a very interesting, because the problem is still whatever a Jew who's cheating at work or not,
Right, you're asking a very good question. At what point, what's called not acting Jewish? Is it all, what will be the definition? That's a very good question. Needs to be researched exactly. At what point would that be considered? Okay, it needs to be looked into, Akiva. That's a great question.
Oh, Rabbi, thank you very much. Thank you.
To know the exact details of that. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All the best. You too.
Bye.